welcome to Community Conversations. My name is Phoenix Kawamoto. I'm the project director for the Greater New Paltz Community Partnership, a drug-free communities grant project serving the Greater New Paltz area. And we're very excited to welcome you to today's show. Our focus for this show is understanding adolescence, kind of revisiting that time in our lives and getting a better understanding of what teens are dealing with today, and how we can best be a source of support and guidance for them as they deal with the stressors in their lives and different developmental issues. So we have wonderful guests here with us today. Starting from my far left, Jessie Moore from Planned Parenthood, as well as Tamara Brown from Planned Parenthood, and Amy Cole from the Family Education Program. So I want to thank you all for being part of this program today, and also for the exciting work that we're getting ready to embark upon. And we'll touch upon some of that as well as we talk about things today. Great. So Amy, I know with the Family Education Program, you do a lot of different programs for parents and have a tremendous amount of resources that we're hoping to showcase some of those here and help us with kind of frame our conversation. How might you want to start this part of our conversation?
Well, the Nurturing Parenting Program is the program that we use in the Family Education Program as a primary curriculum for teaching parenting, and it's a really great curriculum. It's very comprehensive, and the thing that I like most about it is that there are materials that address different ages and stages of development, because parenting doesn't come with an instruction manual. No. And so when you have an infant, it's a lot different than dealing with a toddler and dealing with an adolescent. So the Nurturing Program covers all of those areas of development. And there's this really great sort of slogan that we have in the Nurturing Program called S.P.I.C.E.S, and it's about getting your needs met in different areas that all human beings have areas of need. And so we talk about the spices of life, and it's something very easy for parents and kids to remember. So the spices are different areas of need, including social developmental needs, physical developmental needs, intellectual developmental needs, creative needs, as well as emotional and spiritual needs. So I was hoping that maybe as we're discussing parenting today and ways of helping adolescents, we could use that as kind of a framework for that discussion.
Great, and it's a great tool for not just helping us help teens, but also helping us be mindful of ourselves. And
absolutely,
there's always good things that come from that. So,
and one of the most important things I think for parents to remember is that you're much more able to meet all of these developmental needs in your children if you're taking care of those needs yourself as a parent, because that's something that parents tend to forget. My child has to come first. And what happens when you completely drain yourself? You don't have any energy left to put out for parents, and adolescents require a lot of energy.
Yeah. Well, I had a speaker once talk about how we all have our wells, and it's sort of that same thing. And if I keep emptying my well by, giving it away to others, but I'm not doing the right, enough of the right things to keep my own well replenished, I'm not going to have things to give.
Absolutely.
And not be able to be as helpful as I'd like to be. Now, the first S is social developmental needs.
Social developmental needs.
And I want to bring in both Jessie and Tamara into this conversation as well, because my thoughts is that when people think maybe of Planned Parenthood as an organization, they might not think of things that are around social developmental needs and so forth. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to learn from each other and the different programs that we offer, and also kind of look at things with a wider lens as far as needs and who can help with resources. So what can we learn in regards to that first S from the two of you?
Sure, thank you for having us, first of all. Social development, we talk about that all the time, and people don't think about Planned Parenthood and the development of adolescents. And in our education department, we spend a lot of time with that. We have been trying trying with adolescents, we've learned, to figure out what do they want, what is appropriate, as well as what are they actually going to come to. So where the majority of what we do is education, and we're going out and doing programs on reproductive health care, sexual health, puberty, things like that. There's the other aspect to what we're trying to do, and it's trying to get kids to come together and do different types of activities. But what do they want? And it's really asking them and trying to find out. And it's awesome because in a few of our different towns, we have a group of peer educators. Tamara works directly with 6 youth in Kingston, and in Dutchess County, we also work with youth in Poughkeepsie and Beacon as well. So we have our own teenagers that have been trained in all of these different areas, because what we've learned is that we're old and we're not cool and we don't know anything any longer.
All right, you might be old.
Wait a minute now.
This is what they tell me. But they're going to take something that comes from their peer much better. And if that peer happens to have some knowledge about a place to go or a person to talk to, that peer-on-peer interaction is great. And it also gives us an insight into the teenage world, which is scary at times. The great things that we've been able to do is just kind of getting kids together for different activities. Every year we do the LGBTQ queer prom, and that's an opportunity to bring young LGBT youth and their allies together in a safe environment, because historically they weren't feeling comfortable going to their own proms, or they weren't invited and allowed to bring their partners. And it's something that we've started, and in all of the proms that I've been to, we never have a problem. These kids are great. They come, they have a good time, but they still have that adult supervision to kind of direct it so that they're making good choices that night. So between just bringing the kids together, understanding where they're at, I know that brain development is one of the spots that you're going to talk about, but knowing why they're making the choices they're making has a lot to do with where they're at developmentally, and understanding whether it be the awkward social interaction or really just making mistakes with friends, with partners. We're trying to just
Hold them through that process.
trying to help them through, but give them
Yeah.
a safe environment if there's something that we can do to assist.
Yeah.
And I would say the only thing I have to add about that is that the education programs that we run aren't just about preventing pregnancy, preventing STDs, but we also do healthy relationships programs. And that's not just boyfriend-girlfriend, boyfriend-boyfriend. It's also your friend relationships, your family relationships, your professional relationships, teacher-student, coworkers. So we do these workshops with these teens, and first we allow them to check in with themselves and identify their goals and their likes and dislikes, because part of being in a healthy relationship is making sure you're okay with yourself first.
Right.
And then we identify with them, warning signs of abusive relationships, but also positive signs of good relationships. And so that's one of our good social programs, I would say.
That's excellent.
Sure, and one of the most popular among middle school is a flirting, friendship, and harassment. And teachers love to have us come in and do that, because there is that fine line. And when you're maybe 13, 15 years old, you may not understand what you're doing is bothering someone else opposed to just flirting. And that program has been evolving with the increase of social media, cell phones, texting, and things like that. So that's really flowing right into a discussion on what is appropriate social media, and what better thing in 2013 when we're talking about social development is understanding the internet, the cell phones, and everything that's going on in the internet.
Yeah, I don't want to take us off.
Nope, I apologize.
No apology needed. We want to do a whole show just on that.
Then I will zip my lips.
So, because I think that I was just doing a community presentation just this past week, and a parent in the audience, said, this is wonderful. I mean, he was very excited about the different things that we're doing. He said, and, we really, as parents, given how much importance social media and technology plays in the roles of our teens, we really need some help with this. And I said, you got it. We're going to work on this, and we will dedicate a whole show to that. So I hope that perhaps you can come back and be part of a panel for that, because it is huge. And when folks are learning social interaction with that kind of sort of anonymous buffer between them of, technology and invisibility and so forth with internet, and social interactions can be really challenging as far as face-to-face and
Absolutely.
providing,
Yep.
opportunities for kids to learn how to be together face-to-face, as well as a number of other things. I know with the partnership, we have our youth leadership initiative, and besides, providing youth leadership, training and so forth, another component of that is youth creating youth-specific programs of interest, opportunities for social development, and opportunities for them to explore areas of interest, things that spark them and really inspire them.
Because who knows better than them?
Right,
Definitely.
and our youth leadership initiative is really youth-led with adult help, and rather than us going, well, I think kids would really like this,
Right.
Which is well-intentioned, but we want things to be as, as successful as we can, and help them.
Yeah, and adolescence is so different now than it was when I was a teenager. There wasn't all of that social media and the internet, and so sometimes I feel completely de-skilled as a parent of teenagers right now, that it's very difficult for me to kind of relate, and I have to remember that even though the circumstances are different, that the feelings of adolescence are the same. You talked about that awkward feeling, or just the anxiety about social situations, and providing opportunities for kids to, in a safe way, to socialize with other people is really, really important.
Yeah, and to have safe, I think safe, approachable adults as well, even though, yes, the peer-to-peer, and they're more inclined to go to peer, but to also provide, to be safe adults and be approachable and not allow, and one of my goals anyway, on a professional and personal level, is to not allow, messages I might hear about being too old, to get in the way or cause me to step back at a time where they really might need me to step forward, and let them know that I am approachable, and do that careful dance of respecting adolescent development, but still not becoming
It's a tricky
closed
line.
off. Becoming closed off.
And what you pointed out about the parents remembering is one of the biggest things that we're always trying to point out when we do have a parenting program, is to remind that parent what it was like. And we do that as early as with our puberty programs. When we bring a parent in with that youth, the first thing you really have to do is remind that adult what going through puberty was like, because who remembers that without really stopping and being like, wow, I remember feeling out of control or not ready or whatever it is. But it's taking yourself as the adult back and remembering, and that can be used with a 9-year-old or with a 16-year-old. It's really just remembering that how you felt.
Yeah, and one of the big focuses of the nurturing program, and that we talk about a lot with parents, is developing empathy. Not only children developing empathy, but us as parents to be able to put ourselves in our children's shoes and remember what those feelings were and how difficult it could be.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
Now the puberty word, and it kind of leads us pretty naturally into talking about the physical pieces that are going on as well. And it's been, I can certainly at some point talk about some of the neural brain stuff, but I think the fact that puberty is starting so much younger now and so forth. So I'm wondering how you're approaching talking about physical changes in physical needs with parents as you're working with them. What are some things that you point out, and what could be helpful for our audience who's watching this at home?
Sure. Well, with us, we do puberty programming in 2 different ways. Whether we're working directly with the youth, we have a program called KEY, which is Knowledge Empowers Youth, and that's a 3-part. But we also have a program where we bring in whoever the caregiver is with the youth. We typically will split it up to being boys and girls groups, but the caregiver can be any sex. And that is called Changing Lives. And we like to first explain to people, they see Planned Parenthood and they get nervous. And the first thing I always want parents and everyone out there to know is that when we come in to talk about puberty, we're not talking about sex. there's no reason to. There's no reason to get ahead of yourself. And that's always our biggest thing, is letting people know that we're all about what's age appropriate. And at that time, we're not ready. We're not there yet. So we want to talk about the physical, and we want to really let young girls and young boys know that what's happening is not just happening to them.
And it's normal, yeah.
And it's normal. We use the word normal, even though we hate the word normal.
Yeah.
We want to say there is no normal, but
But when you're 11, that word means everything.
it's huge to know that something
true.
as simple as hair growing in a new place, it's okay.
Right.
Or waking up with an erection, it's okay.
Yeah.
We always say it's funny to talk about when you do puberty classes, when you mention to the boys that nocturnal emissions is normal, they like kind of breathe.
Yeah. Would you tell a young boy that, like Tamara said, that if this happens when you wake up in the morning, that it happens, it may happen to other boys and adult men too. The look of relief on their face it's really funny. And we always talk about just watching that sense of calm come over them, because everybody, when you first walk in, when they're 9, 10, 11 years old, they're nervous. They don't know what's about to be spoken about. Are you going to call on them? They are terrified. And all of a sudden you say one thing and you can just see the relaxation on them. And we don't get into too much, if we're talking to a bunch of girls, they need to understand some of what happens to boys, but we're really there to talk about what happens to them. But what we really want them to understand, regardless if it's young boys or girls, is this is overwhelming to you. So maybe you shouldn't make fun of other kids, because little girls and boys are horrible with each other. And if a boy's voice starts cracking, he's nervous about that and he's upset. And to have someone else teasing him, well, that's not going to help him out. So it's really letting both boys and girls understand that we're all going through these different changes, and how we deal with that is really important in our puberty programming. And like I said, with the parents, reminding them what all these changes were like to be going through. One of the nicest compliments we receive is from Golden Hill Elementary, is in Florida, New York. We've done Changing Lives there for the boys and girls every year since maybe 14, 15 years. And the classes are always packed, and that's with the parents and the child. And the best compliment we get is that when they leave, the conversation in the car ride home is incredible. That kid and that parent finally have connected because they felt comfortable to start the conversation. And now we just hope that it'll continue from 9 years old all the way on through adolescence.
Yeah. And getting that conversation going with kids can be really challenging. So
Sure.
having that avenue, to start it is wonderful opportunity for families.
Yeah, one of the things, in our first show, we did a prescription drug abuse prevention program. And as part of that intro, I explained to folks, how we came into this place of creating these shows. Really, it was through parent feedback as far as what their topics of interest and concern are. And there are a number of topics that aren't substance abuse prevention specific. They're not alcohol and drug related, which a lot of people think that's, while that's the primary focus of why we're here, that's not a really clear-cut, answer. It's so complex. And, our goal, one of our goals is the partnership is to really be a source of resource and information for parents and to be responsive and hear. And I would love to work with you. I think we have some initial conversation going on having one of the puberty classes, and helping make that happen, because I think parents being able to feel comfortable and confident and competent in having those kinds of conversations, which are key for relationship building. If I don't feel like I can talk to you, the more that increases, as the issues get a little more personal or embarrassing. And to me, if I'm a kid and I'm struggling with this, and I don't know if I can talk about this, but as I kind of put my toe in and then another toe in, and you keep being able to respond to me, it's like, oh, okay, good, right? And so any way that we can help make that, help support that happening is really a
None of these topics are in a bubble, and that's what we at Planned Parenthood are always, when we do have the opportunity to speak to either professionals in the field or parents, it's understanding. I'm going to talk about drug and alcohol use because that is a direct correlation to making poor choices sexually. So I encourage parents, well, how old when you first started telling your child that we don't smoke cigarettes? They were probably really little. And you kept telling them that throughout their lives because that was important to you. And we use that because it is, whether it's cigarettes, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether it's waiting to engage in sexual activity, it's just the conversation. And like you said, you made it easy when they were 5. And if it continues to go when they're 18, even if it's a very tricky and difficult topic to discuss with the parent, they're more likely to at least try.
Right.
And you can be honest and say that, this is uncomfortable for me to talk about, or I understand this might make you uncomfortable. I think that's fine to kind of clear the air and give yourself a second, to breathe and think about what you want to say. I think just being honest is the most important thing, because if you're honest, then they'll come back to you. They can rely on you for good information.
Yeah, and I think kids can recognize when you're not being genuine. They definitely will call you out on that, without a doubt.
Yeah.
With Google.
With Google.
That's one of the tips that we like to give is, like Tamara started with, was being honest. And it starts very little. If a 3-year-old asks you, well, how is the baby going to get out of your tummy? And you tell them through your belly button. Imagine what that does in a 3-year-old's brain, that they're scared because, well, they have a belly button. And is it going to rip open? There's a lot of things that could go through a little kid's head.
Absolutely.
Don't lie. The best thing that we have been working with parents is saying, stop, like Tamara said, say, that's a great question. It gives you a minute to calm down, think about what in the world are you going to say. And then the best thing to come back with is, well, how do you think? And a lot of times, depending on their age, especially if they're so young, whatever they come up with is enough for them at the time. You didn't lie to them. You didn't tell them something that wasn't true. They're going to come back to you again. So
And
it's,
you don't have to worry about giving too much information at a young age. You can just, maybe the answer that they give you is
it's
good
all
enough
they
for
need.
them. And then you can come back at a later date. And just like Jessie said, the conversation never ends. And you know, as early as you start, there's things that are age appropriate. So at Planned Parenthood, we have brochures, what to talk about with your child, what's appropriate at what age, by what age they should know their body parts, and how to give consent, and how to seek consent. And because even though we don't talk about engaging in sexual activity with our puberty classes, we do have education programs which teach kids to make healthy decisions and to protect themselves if they are sexually active. Because teens are sexually active, we can't ignore that. But they need to have the right information to make healthy decisions. And
we're not going to get the dolls out and explain it to a 3-year-old, but if that 3-year-old's answer is enough for him at the time, then you just, and you may feel like you dodged a bullet, and that question may not come up again for a couple more years, and then you deal with it in a different manner.
And we always encourage parents to be, the educators of their children. We want parents to be the ones that the kids come to. We're there to give them the comprehensive information in school or in community spaces, but we always tell, I always tell my students, you try to talk to your parents. Think of some way to bring it up if it's important to you. And they're always so nervous to talk to their parents. They're always like, I can't talk to my mom. That makes me sad. I want them to be able to talk to their parents, because they're a trusted adult and they're there for them throughout their whole life, and all these different changes. Why not this one?
One of the things that I get asked a lot is, to provide a program just on adolescent brain development, and we're working on a webinar for that so that we can actually provide
That's great.
some information. I've been working with Shannon Magnetico up at the high school. She's the health teacher up there, for those of you who haven't met Shannon yet, and have done some classes in the health classes, talking with teens about understanding how their brain develops from back to front, and how different areas are more sensitive, and how that can spur and impact their decision-making abilities, more, what parts of the brain are, triggered by more of those impulse, decisions, and how their prefrontal cortex is not ready, it's not fully developed yet. So yes, you can ask your teen, what were you thinking? And they don't know. I don't know. I wasn't thinking.
And that's true.
And, and the difference with, sex in as far as, boys and girls, as far as age of puberty and how, and also brain development issues. So there's a lot of things that, there's so much that we're looking forward to, continuing dialogue with. But there's a lot to be learning and a lot to be thinking about.
And there's so much great current research on brain development, things that we never knew before. And, you know, the approach that we take in the family education program, because we know that when parents understand their child's developmental stages and what's going on for them physically, it reduces the occurrence of abuse and neglect. The more information parents have, the more they understand, the more likely they are to be patient and, you know, considerate of what their children are going through. So we really emphasize educating parents about what to expect at different stages of development, because again, that's not something that you automatically know going into parenting, especially if you've had children really young and you're still kind of in your own going through your own adolescent development. So,
and that's a big deal. We include, we don't go into too much detail, but we do include brain development because it plays such a huge impact.
Yeah.
But also we want to encourage, well, you know your child best, because just because your child is 12 and the charts say that this is where they are developmentally, you may know the factors, things that they've been experiencing. We've had a 12-year-old who knew more than that 12-year-old should know, just because of different life experiences, and required some more discussion from us about sexuality and safe sex. And then you have a 12-year-old who's still playing with dolls and isn't ready for it. So it has a lot to do with knowing, whether it be your class at school, whether it be knowing your children, really knowing, well, where is this child? Because not all 12-year-olds are at the same place at the same time, and that's okay.
Not to mention developmental disabilities. And, you know, what children can handle if their brain hasn't developed in a certain way that a typical 11-year-old has so far.
Yeah, and you mentioned environmental factors. That plays a huge role.
Yeah.
You know, and when parents understand that their behavior as parents impacts the growth of their child's brain, it's like you see this shift, like, oh my goodness, you know, everything that I'm doing impacts the growth of my child's brain, and it becomes like, okay, this is business. This is serious business
but
now.
my sisters and my brothers and my neighbors and my community that I live in is impacting my youth as well.
Absolutely.
Because not a lot of situations, kids aren't just raised by their parents. They're raised by their grandparents and their aunts and uncles and neighbors and babysitters. So
absolutely,
it's not just always you.
There's you know, that saying about it takes a whole village to raise a child,
and it's true.
And you know, we live in a time where there's so much disconnect and challenges as far as families that feel isolated, or you know, parents are working, or you know, or we don't reach out to the kid across the street because it's maybe not not my business, or I don't know what to say to him, or you know, but the opportunity that we have and helping you know, kind of build those you know, those support networks are really important. And I wanted to refer folks to our website, gnpcp.org. We have a couple of TED Talk videos that I happened upon for understanding adolescent brain development, and there's one talk in particular that is that was done by a neuroscientist, but a young neuroscientist from California, talking to a middle school and high school age audience. And I love her presentation. I love the way she's talking to teens about the changes that are happening in their brains at that time. And I think it serves as a great resource, one, to educate ourselves, but also to learn how we can talk about it with teens, and frame language and help them understand, you know, the brain piece of it. I know we could go a long time on each one of these, and we're very grateful to our audience who's giving their time to us. So. Intellectual. If we could move to the next one.
Intellectual development. So, you know, just like, you know, you go and you get exercise to make your body stronger. You know, you need to exercise your brain also. And, you know, just the more stimulation that we can give kids, you know, as far as things to think about, things to consider, critical thinking skills, evaluating things, very, very important for adolescents to constantly be stimulated in that way. And, I think it's important to also look at, your morals, values as a family. What are things that are important to you? What are the things that you want your children to learn more about? And making that a part of your daily life. The brain needs exercise, just like every other part of your body.
I think that's very important what you're talking about. And I think some adults, I'm horrible. I'm one of those adults that sometimes it's easier to just do something yourself.
Yeah.
But to actually be able to take the time, give some directions, let the youth do it. See what they can come up with. When our peer educators work on a project by themselves with just a little bit of our help, they have a new ownership over it also.
Right.
They've had to put their brains to work, whether they're thinking something up, maybe physically they had to create something, but it's theirs when it's done.
That's right.
And they have a totally different respect for the process and what they've created.
Right.
Our peer educators are working for the second time with a company called My Media Life to create public service announcements.
It's awesome.
The grown-ups are not allowed to say anything.
It's really hard.
And yeah, it's Tamara's been there working with them both times, and that's what I hear from the adults is it's very difficult
But
to
it's also
not.
amazing.
Yeah.
Because they're sitting in a circle, all working with themselves, brainstorming, coming up with the scripts and costumes and casting, and they're all in the circle. The adults are on the outside. They can feel us there supporting them, and they know that we're sitting back there, not talking, just listening. That in and of itself makes them excited, inspired, and they feel heard, they feel important, they feel like, they can create an entire video by themselves, which they can and they have and they will again.
Right.
That's great.
Creating opportunities for children to succeed in that way, for adolescents to succeed in that way is so important.
And also to make mistakes. Creating
Yeah.
a safe
Yeah.
place,
How
a
else do you
safe
learn?
opportunity for them to kind of fumble a little bit and
It's
then
okay
get
to
back
disagree.
on track. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay to make a mistake. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great.
I like what you were saying, Amy, about exercise. The brain needs exercise, and I've used that analogy a lot with kids. If I'm constantly only using one particular part of my brain, it's like if you go to a gym, you join the gym, you do the full circuit workout. You might do abs on these couple of days, and then you do other work on your legs or your arm. But you're looking at getting it to be well-rounded, in balance. That type of thing, and one of the videos that we have on the adolescent brain development piece, they actually talk about in the period of adolescence how the brain is kind of doing this pruning phase, so that if there are synapses that aren't being used, they're kind of disconnected, they're kind of trimmed away, and the strongest parts of the brain are enhanced, you know. And so, our body is, and the brain is so amazing, but, that ability to know that your brain is looking to kind of, oh, she's not using that. Okay, well, moving on, we're going to just push this piece aside, and wow, okay, so I want to make sure that I'm developing, as much in key areas as I can, so that those synapses that really are going to benefit me are going to keep firing and improving as I go forward.
Teens are full of a million questions, and caregivers, need to see that as an opportunity for like, oh, okay, great. You have a question about what's going on in this country or that country. Let's go and figure out the answers, and also to understand that everything that you read on the internet is not necessarily true, and how to kind of tease out. I know.
Or on
TV. Right? But to tease out, what's true and what's not true, and what fits with, your morals and values as a family, and all of that.
And I think whether you're the caregiver or just an adult working with the youth, to say, like Tamara said, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Maybe we can figure it out.
That is so big to say to someone, because if a child or a teenager just assumes that, well, you know everything when you're a grown-up, that could be intimidating. How am I going to know everything? But if they come to me and ask a question, and I'm like, I haven't the foggiest. But yes, like you said, let's figure it out together. Let's go look it up. And that does give you the opportunity to teach them how to weed out what is real and what is not, especially on the internet.
Absolutely.
And I would say with all the questions that they have, it is important to be in the moment and answer them, and not just, like, you're tired, I know you worked a long day, and you don't want to answer all these questions. But then, you know, when you want to talk and they're sitting there silent and you're asking them all these questions and they're giving you one-word answers, and you get frustrated because they don't want to talk to you.
That is such a good point.
That's a really good
Well,
point.
maybe,
Really
you
good
know,
point.
when they are talking, take that as an opportunity and actually have a conversation with them.
Yeah, I think
Or
most,
just sit and listen. I think that's the biggest advice to give, is to
Yeah.
just like be quiet for a while, because maybe something will come up. Like, don't be afraid of the silence. I know
Yeah.
personally it takes me a long time to come up with things that I want to say, and so whenever I would talk to my parent, it would you know, they'd ask all these questions, but then they'd keep talking. They'd ask a question, but then talk over it. And I'd be like, well, no, you don't want to actually know what I want to think. So,
Yeah,
so I think
really
just
good
being
point.
silent for a little while and letting things come up naturally, it's okay to take a little more time.
It's true.
I think
There's
that's the car. Everybody I speak to, and that was me when I was younger, so many great conversations with parents happen in the car.
That's right.
You're just kind of trapped there, and it's like Tamara said, if you're that caregiver or the adult in the car and the question comes up and you are just deer in headlights, I don't know how to answer that, what to do, don't just ignore it. It's a great opportunity. They've actually asked you a question. Use that. We try to think of things as teachable moments, and I'm sure that's the
Yes.
term that you guys use as well.
Yeah.
That's a teachable moment. If something comes up, use it. If you're watching a movie and there's something inappropriate that you aren't comfortable with your child viewing, we feel that the worst thing you can do is just change the channel real quick and pretend it didn't happen.
Right.
Instead, why don't we talk about why we don't approve of this? Whether it be something violent, whether it be something sexual, if it's something that you're uncomfortable with and you don't want your child exposed to that, instead of just covering it away from them, now they really want to know what that was. They're going to
right.
find any way to put that channel back on or see what it was that you didn't want them to see.
Yeah.
Use the moment. Easier said than done. Sometimes
Right.
I understand that, but use as many of those moments as you can. Take advantage of them, and like Tamara said, that silence, it's okay. It's okay sometimes.
Yeah, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, right? We should do twice as
say.
much listening.
That's what they say. I think it's one of those important,
Yeah,
you know, pieces of wisdom, folk wisdom.
yeah.
Creativity.
Creativity.
One of my favorite
Another one of
topics.
the spices. You know, this can be seen with, you know, the way adolescents or teens dress. You know, that's a way of expressing their creativity. I was at a rock concert with my son last night, who's turning 14, and I was looking around at all the kids at this concert, and you know, it sparked me to think about this. This is their way of being creative and expressing themselves. They had their faces painted and, you know, all kinds of really neat clothing. And, you know, I was like, wow. It was like the epitome of, you know, a teen environment. You know, it was very interesting. But, you know, ways of dressing, ways of expressing yourself, hobbies, you know, getting in touch with what makes you feel good. You know, and providing opportunities for kids to be creative, doing, you know, I don't know, projects, you know, around the house, just encouraging their, you know, what is it that makes you tick?
Yeah.
Makes you feel
And not
good.
discouraging the things
And
they
not
do.
discouraging it.
Like
It's-
the ways that they're dressing, like, oh, I don't understand that. Why would you
Yeah.
have that done? Like, that looks so
Right.
silly, or I
Right.
don't understand why kids do this these days. And also, like, going back to puberty and thinking what going through puberty was like, thinking about being a teenager and how you express yourself. Maybe, you know, you wore your hair in a ponytail on one side, or like an
Right.
off-cut shoulder, or
And that was
you know,
a rebel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
right.
a rebel.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So it's this,
Yeah.
it's kind of the same. It just
Right.
looks different.
Blue hair doesn't make someone a bad person.
Right.
I had a bandana thing happening at a certain point
Yeah,
in
you
my
Very nice.
adolescence, yes. And I remember I had this adult person,
Oh, yeah.
God bless him, but he came out and he said, "What does that mean?" Like, he was just so confrontational. I was like, "It doesn't mean it. It has to mean something." I said, "No, I just like it." You know, and he really had a hard time with me because I wasn't, you know, I wasn't trying to be disrespectful or avoiding or evasive, you know,
Right.
avoiding the question. It was just an expression. That it was that simple. It was just, I don't know, I like this look.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
then maybe you felt
And-
awesome that day. Like, you looked really hot, you know? Or,
Yeah.
like, you feel beautiful, and then
Yeah.
someone calls you out on, you know, being too provocatively dressed. But, like, you thought you looked really good that day. Then you're kind of shut down, and maybe now you feel a little bit bad about yourself. And, you know, the comments that you can make
Yes.
toward teens, they really impact them, and they can't just brush them off sometimes.
Right.
Sure, and I can understand the parent side of it still as well. If your teenager comes out in something that you're There's a difference though. Do you just think it's weird? Or
Right.
is there something that could harm them that really makes you uncomfortable? There's a difference between wearing a skirt that's a little too short for your liking and something that is really inappropriate to go out in public in.
But there's a right way to talk about it.
Exactly.
Right.
And there's a way to have that discussion. Telling someone, don't do that. Well, I'm going to make it shorter now. I think
Absolutely.
and that's not kids now. That's not kids 10 years ago.
Right.
That's always been teens, adolescents,
Right.
and young kids. That's some adults. If you tell me that my skirt is too short, there's a good chance I'm just going to make it shorter. So why don't you
Absolutely.
talk to me about why you're uncomfortable about it? Give me some reason behind why you think I should change the outfit or the activity that I'm doing. Don't just tell me no.
Right.
And I understand that that's also easier said
Yeah.
than done, especially when you're a parent who's working 2 jobs, you're exhausted, you have 3 kids to take care of, you're running them around, maybe you don't have a partner to support you, and you're just exhausted. And that's what you come home
Absolutely.
and see. You may not take the time to stop, breathe, and think about what you're saying. And I think that's what's very important to try to do.
Absolutely.
I always tell people I don't have my own children. I get to work with everyone, everyone else's children. And I always say, it's, in my opinion, it is like the hardest job on the planet, one of the most important jobs, where there isn't a manual that we can give you. I mean, there's lots of manuals, so to speak. I mean, there's this program and this, these recommendations, and here we are today, trying to help provide, tips, which we will expand on, and we'll be having more, the parenting journey class here in New Paltz sometime in the spring. Well, actually, maybe January, February, we'll start that, and our class for puberty and how, navigate through that. But it is a tough job.
Yeah.
And everybody's in this position of, I think, trying to do the best they can, and yet, and teens who are kind of caught in this place too and want to be understood, and,
Right.
how we navigate through that. And
Well, and even if you take every single one of these tips and you feel like you're doing everything by the book or what, these 4 people here are suggesting for you to do, it doesn't guarantee that your kid isn't going to make mistakes or do
Right.
things a
Part
little
of the
differently than you
process.
hope they would. So,
yeah, it's-
Mistakes made us all who we are at this table today.
Absolutely.
You just hope that the choices that we make aren't going to have negative consequences down the road, that at least we'll learn from those mistakes and keep going. But we've all made mistakes.
Absolutely.
and we've survived.
Yes.
We're lucky.
We're very lucky.
We're lucky. And,
Yeah.
I want to say the partnership helped create and put together a Youth Sparks interest survey, and it kind of lends to something, and I'll touch on it very briefly, in that we asked close to 700 students in grades 8 through 11 what inspired them, what really gave them that spark, where do they feel their talents lie. Not so much as a possible profession, but just as a sense of who they are as a person, and being able to support that creativity, whether it's an arts-based, expression, whether it's innovation in inventing something or creating something that way, or if it's, sports and developing my technique, or however it might be. But to be able to support youth, and one of the things that we know in regards to that piece of development is that if there's at least one person in the family, one person in school, and one person in the community that supports that youth's spark, recognizes it,
Right.
Helps connect them to an opportunity to explore it, they are tremendously less likely to engage in behaviors that will cause harm to them. And it may not, pan out, to a like I said, a vocation, or, it's about happiness and, feeling a sense of competency and fulfillment in life.
Absolutely.
And, no matter what the creative expression, whether, like I said, arts, we have 49% of New Paltz students said arts was one of those, it was their number 2 spark.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of youth that, yes, sports was big, but arts is another way. Nature and environment came in 3rd, so we have information, and we're working with youth and community to come together to help connect kids for those opportunities. So
great.
we have some good stuff happening.
And one of the critical questions for teens is like, who am I? What is my identity? What am I doing here? What's the purpose and creative expression is a way to kind of answer some of those questions for yourself.
And deal with some of the emotional
Ups and downs.
I have the advantage. I get to see Amy's notes. And, I can't on the screen, but I know that we're coming up on E, and none of these are in a vacuum either. Just like substance abuse and all these topics aren't in a vacuum, and how much with the physical things that are going on, and that we're not have just little isolated pieces of development. It's a full, it's a full plate here.
Right.
So when we talk about emotional, what pieces of information would you like to give parents? What tips as we start to wind our show down? Because the time is going by very quickly.
Yeah, in terms of emotional development, nurturing and attachment is so important for everyone, and it's important for parents to understand that it's normal for kids to start to detach a little bit from their parents in adolescence as teens and become more dependent on their peers and their social life to get their emotional needs met. But one of the things that we always say to parents is don't get frustrated if your child pushes you away. Just keep offering that nurturance and that affection. Let them know that you're always going to be there to help them get their emotional needs met. Really, really important, because it's easy to get frustrated and take it personal and feel like, well, what did I do wrong, and understand that that's a normal part of becoming more autonomous, more independent, separating a little bit.
Yeah.
So just staying present, and letting them know I'm here for you, no matter what.
And on the brain side, the amygdala is, that little emotional center in the brain, and it's very sensitive in adolescence. And so things that normally maybe didn't bother them are suddenly bothering them, and and they can have more of a hot button that it's happening on a neurobiological, neurochemical place, and so there's lots of different reasons why that might be you might be getting that response too.
And they're going to be experiencing their emotions through things like listening to music, and and I realized when I was talking to my son and he was, listening to a song, Mom, you got to listen to this song, and the song that he was listening to is called Odd One from the S.P.I.C.E.S. It's a rock and roll song, pretty popular on the radio. And he's like, you have to listen to the lyrics to this song. And so I really took the time to listen to the lyrics, and it says, we are all desperately seeking to fit in with anyone who will accept us, but not you, odd one. And it just made me realize, this is the struggle that he's having. And if he's having that struggle, probably most other kids his age are having that struggle. But it was really...
that he saw that, though, and was able to express that and say, this song right here, listen to this. I think that's great.
But that was the first time that it made me realize, wow, I have to be paying attention. Whenever he asked me to listen to a song, the worst thing I could do is say, I don't have time right now. I need to take in those words, And he also said to me, I was telling Phoenix that, he said, I know when you're not really listening to the song that I'm playing for you, because the next day you'll be like, oh, that's a good song. I haven't heard that before. When I already played it for you. So he's teaching me. Yeah, he called me out, and he's teaching me so much about how to be a good parent by being able to express his needs. But I've always encouraged him to use his personal power in that way to express himself, to tell me what it is that he needs.
So Amy, I have to thank you, because when we were preparing for this show, and Amy mentioned the piece about the song Odd One by the S.P.I.C.E.S. It was not a song I was familiar with, and Amy said to me, you really should check that out. And I said, I will, And I love the fact that your son was, as Jessie said, able to really communicate that with you and let you know that it was important. And not that he just liked the song, but I really want you to listen to the lyrics, to that, this song is my voice. So check it out.
Yes, absolutely.
And sometimes, depending on, and it doesn't matter, what music genre, but sometimes it's really hard to decipher what the lyrics are, whether it's moving too fast or the beat's really great, or I'm not catching it. It's, I went home, and that day I went home to YouTube, and punched it in and found the video that brought up the lyrics, so that as I was listening, I could get the message too.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, I would have really loved that song when I was a teen.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and the
'Cause
lyrics
it
are
was a
so
great, powerful
powerful.
song.
And what a
Yeah.
great tool for you.
Yes.
Because you didn't know what the song was going to sound like, and there's a chance maybe you couldn't understand what they
Right.
were saying, but
Right.
somebody took the time to put the lyrics on the screen for you.
Yeah,
That's
and,
great.
And sometimes, I have to say, if you were to look at my, my iPod and see, I got everything in there,
Right.
almost everything in there, as far as music genres. But sometimes there's something that is distracting, or the volume, or whatever.
Right.
But it's great. I can just mute it and watch the lyrics, even. If that's what it takes for me to kind of focus in.
Yeah.
But I love YouTube. And
Yeah.
I think that it has, there's so many online resources and ways that we can kind of tap things to get some
Absolutely.
help with something and be able to, utilize that understanding.
Right.
I think it was awesome. So
And my child definitely communicates through music, and I think that's true for a lot of other teens.
And I think that experience, it could be very different. It could be that the song has some very horrible lyrics, whether it's talking about, disrespecting women or
Exactly.
or whatever. But that's still another teachable moment. It's not just, I don't want you listening to that. It's,
Right.
do you listen to what they're really saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Because
A lot
there's
of
a
times
good
they don't.
chance they
Yeah.
just like the
They
beat.
just like the beat.
Right.
And being able to say, let's look at what you're listening to. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to stop listening to it, but at least maybe they can understand a little more why you don't approve of it. And you're not
Absolutely.
just being that nag yelling at them. You've taken the time to say, this doesn't fly in our house.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what
And that's why.
we really like to encourage is reminding, yes, Planned Parenthood, we do feel that at certain ages you should be having certain conversations, but we still empower that parent to say, it's still your home, it's still how you want to raise your children. It has to do with your morals, it has to do with your beliefs, whether it be your religion. It's what you still see as right and how you can incorporate all that together is very important.
Yeah.
And to be able to have that,
Yeah.
conversation, and like, there's so many songs. I love the beat. I love
Yeah.
to dance,
Right.
So it's like, yeah. But then I hear the lyric, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that one goes off my list. Like
Yeah.
I can't resolve that one.
it's-
But it's different for me at my age. There were certain songs that I definitely, I think as a teenager, because music has always been very powerful and important in my life, and there were certain songs that. When I heard what they were saying, I was even uncomfortable with, as a younger person,
Yeah.
So I think, it gives us that opportunity to say, well, I like this part of the song, but man, I don't know why they had to go in that direction.
It really
know?
does open up a lot of doors to communication. Like you mentioned, my kids have listened to some rap music and, hard rock music, all different kinds of music. So I really pay attention to what the words are, what's behind this song, and I've had a lot of opportunities to talk with them about, abusive relationships and, things like that. And had we not listened to that music together, we might not have had that opportunity. So it's really been
Self-worth
important.
and self-esteem are
Yes.
things that are very important to us, and we start with discussions very young when we're working with youth. And it's people ask us to come in and do this program for the young girls, and we're like, it's not just young girls, it's everybody.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to a song as a young man or a young woman, and the things that you're hearing, you may start to internalize that.
Exactly.
Between the music, between whatever you may be seeing in, we're not even going to touch, advertisements in the media, because that's a whole 6 more hours. But if you're seeing things constantly putting people down, and if maybe people in your life are putting you down, your self-esteem and your self-worth, you really need to bring that back up, because having those low, whether you're male or female, is going to lead to some negative choices.
Absolutely.
Whether that be drugs and alcohol, smoking cigarettes, engaging in sexual activity, any risky behaviors. But it's that
Absolutely.
self-worth, and that still ties into what we're talking about, the emotional needs here. It's really having that self-worth of yourself.
That's true.
And thoughts become things. So, how I think about myself.
Oh, yeah.
It triggers a chain reaction of different types of thoughts and decisions, and we don't exist in a vacuum. So when I think about these steps not existing in a vacuum, these stages, the spices, the opportunities, media literacy, bringing in something like you've been saying, about you see something on a show or you hear something or there's a news story, being able to help connect dots and ask questions to help them think about those, what do they think about that? What do I heard an interesting fact today, what do you think? Is that what how do you see it? And just allow those kinds of things to come in. So as we wind things down and we get to the last S in S.P.I.C.E.S.
The last S in S.P.I.C.E.S is spirituality. And spirituality really is, finding kind of a sense of belonging. Where do I fit in the world? And for some people, religion plays a big part in your family and kind of guides you spiritually. So again, it really comes down to what are your morals and values as a family? What are the things that you want to impart to your children? How do you want them to find that sense of belonging? And, for me and my family, it's all about nature. It's all about being outside. It's connecting with Mother Earth, and that's kind of how we find that feeling of a higher being, a power greater than ourselves, something along those lines. But I think it's important to educate teens about lots of different forms of spirituality and ways that people practice, because it can be very enlightening and allow them to kind of make their own choices about what makes them feel that sense of belonging.
Right, and I like what you said in that, there may be a particular religious tradition or wisdom tradition that, helps support that or helps me connect. But, it can be so much wider, as far as the lens, as far as developing, how do I feel connected?
Right.
Connection to self and connected to others and feeding that part of myself that really helps me, ground and also just expand at the same time. It's like, oh, I am part of something bigger, and what do I think about life? What do I think? Why am I here? We have these questions that we just have as human beings here, and that really probe us to explore, to go deeper, to think about things. It can be as simple as something. His Holiness the Dalai Lama will say, "Compassion is my religion." So it really is up to the parent and the youth, and what is it for each one of us?
Yeah, because what happens when you don't have a sense of purpose? You feel hopeless. You feel like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
So helping teens develop a sense of purpose, what's important to you? What are the things that you want to contribute to the world? Opens up a lot of doors.
I think that's one of the things why the partnership, we're really, while we work on substance abuse prevention, I mentioned it's much wider than that. When we looked at positive youth development assets, the 40 developmental assets, and we look at, sparks, those things that create, that spark, that sense of purpose and excitement. And I had someone say to me, they were thinking in the lungs of career, that it was a career interest. And I said, no, it may become, it's great when you love the work that you do and it feeds you. Oh my gosh, that's the greatest thing, right? To get paid, be paid to do something that lights you up.
Right.
And hopefully, I wish everyone had that opportunity. As a matter of fact, there was someone a motivational speaker who said actually only 20% of the adult workforce feels that with their job. 80% do not. That is, wow, right?
Yeah.
I'm one of the lucky in the 20% that, I really, this is what lights me up. But to help youth find that and know that it may not be a job. You may find this is what's going to be what you'll do to pay your bills and feed your yourself, your family. So that idea of being able for them to develop that piece of not just might be a work, something that will sustain them, but what will really feed them and feed their spirit is great. It's so important and something I don't think we pay enough attention to.
I agree.
And asking those kinds of questions lets you know, when someone asks me that, it's like, oh, they really want to know about me. Not what I think, just what I think, but what do I feel? What do I want? And I think that's awesome.
And I just want to add about S.P.I.C.E.S, as a whole, is that meeting all of these needs in ourselves and helping our children meet these needs is the way to prevent people from making desperate decisions that might be risky. When your needs are met and you're taking care of yourself, and the people around you are modeling that as well, there's not as much temptation to engage in risky behavior. So yes, it's substance abuse prevention and so much more, prevention of all kinds of risky behaviors.
Because people are feeling, we're helping provide the anchor.
Yes.
What's going to help, because the waters can be rough, then they smooth out, and then
Yeah.
but what's going to help anchor? What helps anchor me? What helps anchor you? What's
Yeah.
going to help anchor them? We've covered a lot of ground here, and this has been wonderful. I love doing this show and the opportunity to collaborate and work with people who are doing phenomenal work here in your community. And as we wrap things up, what I'd like to do is just ask each one of you, what's the one thing you want to remind our viewers that you feel is really important from our conversation today? Because we have covered a lot of great conversation, great information. Folks can always go back to the partnership website, gnpcp.org, to see this show or other shows. But what's the one thing you want people to take away? I don't know who would like to go first, but what's your one takeaway?
Take care of your spices.
All right.
I would say to listen, whether it's to actually physically listen or taking a note, like Amy said about your kid coming to you about a particular song, thinking, oh, that might be something bigger than just him wanting me to, listen to the song. Maybe he's trying to talk to me through music, or even a reaction that they're having, a certain emotion that they're having that, even if it might seem silly to you, that they're really upset that their shoes doesn't match their shirt, that might maybe at that point that's really important to them. So not discouraging that and kind of validating their concerns, but just listen.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
And I think the best tidbits that I have that I can share, there's 4, but they're quick. It's normalize and validate the child's question and ask why they're asking it, because a lot of what we're talking about is those critical questions. How do I answer that? But validate the question and ask, why are you asking that? What made you think about that? Ask your child what they think the answer is. I had said that before, and often that's enough for them at the time. Third is answer the question honestly based on your child's response and your own values. We're not taking that away from anyone. Your values are still very important to you. We want that to be a part of it, but you also have to remember that teens are still going to make choices that we don't agree with. You still want to be there for them. And the fourth is ask the child if they understand the answer. You may have said something and it was way over their head, and they don't. And then it's been unsuccessful.
Yeah.
So I think, really thinking about those 4 things when you do get approached with a question is very important.
Those are great.
Great. Well, again, I want to thank all of you. I really look forward to working with you in the future, and please keep an eye out on the website. We will be posting, announcements as to the different workshops and classes, follow-up that will be happening as a result of these shows and this conversation in particular, as far as resources for parents. And thank you so much for your time and your continued support of the Community Partnership. We are working really hard to help you in the best ways that we can. And if you have any questions that you would like to have us answer, things that you're not sure of, or how to contact individuals that may appear on the show, please feel free to give me a call at the Partnership Office, 845-419-3678. And again, thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you for having us.